What's up, guys? Welcome back to week 9 of Breaking into IT with AT. And today we are going over more security compliance as well as some common practices and ways that you can implement a risk management plan into your own organization or into your own life. Before we start today, I kind of want to address everybody and let everybody know that today we won't be able to have an in-person class over the Zoom call just because I've had a death in the family. Recently, I have been going through some adversity in my own personal life outside of surgery last week and this week, a death in the family. But I understand that whenever you're doing something good, the devil always tries to put hurdles in your way. He's going to throw adversity in your way. He's never going to let you just operate in a righteous way without there being some type of setback. So today, I'm not going to let that setback overcome our situation. We are headed in the right direction. I really fully believe in this program, and I believe in the people in this program. And I want to do a great service to you all, to everybody who's tuning in, to everybody who's ever tuned in before. And let's get it. I want to kind of pay a little bit of homage to my grandfather before we start. Timothy Goodwin died today at the age of, I think, 90. And he was a great man. He was my grandfather. What else can I say? Back in the 50s, he fought in the Korean War. He was an engineer for the Air Force. Growing up, he grew up in South Carolina back in the days of the Jim Crow South. When there was segregation and limited civil liberties for people like me. And, he overcame a lot of that adversity back then. If you think about it, in the 50s, black people weren't really getting a lot of opportunities outside of being an infantryman or somebody on the front line. And that's all noble, but at the same time, in order for us to break into other sectors of the military that required a little bit more not brain power, because everybody requires brain power in the military, but required a different level of technical knowledge and technical understanding. He had to pass tests. He had to fight adversity. There were a million hurdles in his way, and he never let any of those stop him. So for him to even be able to do that back then is a huge accomplishment. He was able to travel the world. A little boy from South Carolina was able to travel the world with the military, see things and places that his peers or his family could have never imagined. So he accomplished a lot in his life. He was a father. He was a husband. He was an upstanding citizen in his community. I remember, I have so many fond memories of my grandfather. Growing up, he was one of those guys. He used to drive a big Cadillac back in the day, but he would sit his coffee on the dashboard and ride around town, and wouldn't a drop of that coffee spill on the dashboard or anything. He just had a type of class and a type of honor about himself that you could tell when you looked at him and when you spoke to him. He was a man of integrity. So, R.I.P. Timothy Goodwin. We love you. We'll miss you. He was lucid until his last days. So, having conversations with him, you could tell the level of intelligence that he had and still has. He was still operating a computer. He was able to troubleshoot and fix certain things mechanically, if they went wrong. He would ask me to help him a lot too, as well, which is my job. And kind of like some of the inspiration for my job was like going home every Sunday, and he would have a new problem for me on the computer, and I would sit down and work through it and work it out, and that sharpened my skills as well as helped him learn about how to operate in today's landscape with new technology. So speaking about my grandfather now, kind of getting choked up, so I don't really want to go too far into it, but R.I.P. Timothy Goodwin. Let's hop into this course. Let's hop into this class. We went over security compliance last on Tuesday in our last course. So let's do a little bit of review here. The types of data that you want to secure is personally identifiable information, amongst other things. So like date of birth, first name, last name, address, social security number, mother's maiden name, race, religion, marital status. There's a bevy of information out there that attackers could use to exploit you and exploit the people that you love around you. So you definitely want to be cognizant of these things floating around on the internet. A lot of this information is available on the internet, for a price or for a fee through different data brokerages who collect information on people. So we gave a couple examples of some ways that you could go on these sites and get this information taken off of these sites. So at the end here, I dropped some links on some paid and unpaid, some paid and some free options for removing your information from the internet. So Incogni is a software, or is an online website that you can go to, and you can pay for their service. You can go to their consumer report and USA Today, and there's a couple articles there on how to get your information taken down off of Google and these different brokerage sites. And then we have where all of our links and all of our information is coming from. So for the most part, for this security course, I kind of focused on the CompTIA just because it's the base. It's a good base level knowledge foundation that you can use in the future. So most of the things that you see on this part of the course are directly from CompTIA.com, whether that be their security or their A+ section. I think for today, I took most of it from the security section, but it's literally like word for word. I'm going to add, my own tidbits and color to it, but for the most part, this is coming directly from the source. So in saying that, let's get into what we're covering today. If you're interested in IT security, cybersecurity, I know everybody's heard of the $250,000, $300,000 salaries of SOC analysts. Any type of security role. Not necessarily, you're not making $300,000 as a SOC analyst, but if you are a manager or somebody who runs a team, you can make a lot of money in the cybersecurity space very quickly. But also in that space, it takes a lot of knowledge and prerequisite knowledge to break in. So we'll give some of that to you here, as well as if you are interested in it, you should probably look up things pertaining to the CompTIA Security Plus, because that exam is a direct reflection of what you're going to see in the field. So the CompTIA Security Plus is the first cybersecurity certification a candidate should earn. It establishes the core knowledge required in the field and provides a springboard to intermediate level cybersecurity jobs. Security Plus incorporates best practices and hands-on troubleshooting, ensuring that you have practical security problem-solving skills required to assess the security of an organization and recommend and implement appropriate solutions. That's a big one if you're getting into a consultation. Monitor and secure hybrid environments, including cloud, mobile, and IoT. And today, that's pretty much every environment. They operate on a local server system, as well as different resources being available in the cloud and things like that. IoT, the Internet of Things, is basically like things that aren't computers or servers that are hooked up to a network. So your thermostat could be hooked up to a network. What else? TVs in the office or in your home are hooked up to a network. So those are Internet of Things, just things that basically live on the network but aren't your computer. Operate with an awareness of applicable laws and policies, including principles of governance, risk, and compliance. We kind of talked about compliance a little bit in our course on Tuesday. Well, a lot of it in our course on Tuesday. So go ahead and check out that last video if you're still kind of fuzzy on what compliance is. Identify and analyze and respond to security events and incidents. This is Something that happens a lot when you're in an organization, you'll get a phishing email, and maybe somebody will report it to the IT help desk, and you're there to basically analyze and respond and act accordingly. Whether or not you need to block a domain or um, remediate a situation. You need to have a plan. The CompTIA Security Plus is compliant with the ISO 17024 standards and approved by the US DoD to meet Directive 814, whatever requirements. ISO 1724 is definitely something that you should be aware of if you're working in security. This is, common compliance pretty much everywhere. It provides confidence and trust in the outputs of an accredited program. Over 2.3 million CompTIA, ISO, ANSI, and SI accredited exams have been delivered since January 1st, 2011. So they're just pretty much pumping up their chest. 2.3 million. Good job, CompTIA. Shout out to y'all. I'm studying right now for my Security Plus. So when I do this course, just know we are learning the information together. I have access to the actual test. So all of our studies will be based directly from that test. Here's some of the exam details. There's two parts of the test. There's 601 and 701. The exam description, the Security Plus exam certification will verify the successful candidate has knowledge and skills required to assess the security posture of an enterprise environment and recommend and implement appropriate security solutions. So kind of the same thing we just said. It'll just make you a security professional. There's 90 questions, multiple choice and performance based, and passing score is 750 on a scale of 100 to 900. This is just a little bit more information, kind of like what your prerequisites should be. So a lot of people I talk to want to go straight into cybersecurity. And I think that is viable for a lot of people. I think a lot of people can just hop right into cybersecurity. I think you have to really take your study seriously, maybe go get a 4-year degree and spend some time. The cybersecurity degree is relatively new. It wasn't really offered, even 5 or 6 years ago. So now that schools are kind of focusing on this, I would say if you're thinking of getting into straight into cybersecurity without having any work experience, I would say maybe a bachelor's degree is probably the best answer for you. But if you took the self-taught route, which is kind of the route that I'm taking, and you have relevant experience, I think that'll help you a lot more. You should work in IT administration and infrastructure and kind of understand how the job role is affected by security, and also understand fundamental knowledge of just computers and networks and all that stuff in general. So working in the field for a year or two is definitely going to give you a better grasp on what you need to know, what you're lacking in, and also will give you an idea of like what your peers are studying and what they know, and what's important and what's not important. So definitely if you didn't have the chance to go to school and spend $50,000 on a degree, and you're self-taught like me, start off in infrastructure, start off as a system analyst, start off as a system administrator, and kind of work your way into the field, because there's a lot of background knowledge that you need to know before you can just guarantee that you're going to secure somebody's network. Forms of penetration threats. While forms of penetration threat actors will use to infiltrate a system or organization. So this part basically is about breaking down the different things that you'll see in the landscape, in your web environment. Hopefully not in your web environment, but these are some of the common ways that people get hacked. So penetration testing involves simulating various threat actors' activities to identify vulnerabilities within a system or organization. Threat actors use a range of methods to infiltrate a system, and we'll talk about all those below. And these are some of the common ones. So social engineering, I've been a victim of this myself on multiple occasions, which they always tell you, man, and you can take that one or two ways. You can say, One, poor OPSEC. Maybe I was just a regular user. 2 years ago, I wasn't even into IT like that. So all these kind of happened before then, and I didn't necessarily um, understand what was going on, or know how to remediate certain situations. But now that I've been through it, I think I have relevant experience and relevant knowledge that can help people not fall into those same situations that I fell into. I think experience is the best teacher when it comes to things. Um, being being a professional, an IT professional now, I obviously wouldn't go for the same things that I went for in 2017. But yeah, man, a lot of this stuff, people aren't trying to hack networks and systems anymore, since systems and networks are getting so advanced. They're trying to hack people. They're trying to hack people like you and me, who may not um, understand that this is not a link to google.com account recovery page. This is a link to somebody else's page. Now obviously now I can find all that information, and I'm very good with looking at links as far as like emails and that are in my email and different things. So I have a couple different protocols in place now to make sure that that never happens again. But um, yeah, the low hanging fruit is social engineering, just finding somebody and tricking them into giving you their password or revealing sensitive information. So the first form of that we'll talk about is phishing. And if you watched the last episode, you know that this is how my Instagram got hacked back in 2017. It was a simple phishing email that requested some information, and it harvested my username and password based on the information I gave them in the link. So sending deceptive emails or messages to trick users into revealing sensitive information or clicking on malicious links is phishing. So that's probably the number one thing that you're going to see as a SOC analyst in your organization. That's the number one thing I dealt with at my last position, the position I had before here. That basically was my whole job, was going through emails and phishing emails that were reported by employees, and basically blocking domains if we needed to block it, or allowing traffic through that needed to be allowed through that may have gotten caught up in our detection system. So phishing is a big one. Spear phishing, customized phishing attacks targeting specific individuals or organizations. So yeah, online, a lot of threat actors will go through LinkedIn, or they'll go through different sites that have organizational data, and they'll look for specific departments in these organizations, like accounting and payroll, finance. People who cut checks and authorize checks are huge targets. So they'll target CEOs. They'll target just about anybody in there. So spear phishing is a customized phishing attack targeting specific individuals or specific organizations. So this will be specifically made for the individual to see in that organization. Whaling is the same thing basically, but it's when you're targeting executives like a CEO or a high profile individual in the organization. And this has happened in multiple organizations that I've been at, where they've been targeted, they've been sent emails, and it was up to the IT team. If it wasn't for us, there would be millions of dollars lost based on the information that these attackers were asking for. So definitely know that you're going to be on the front line of this as a SOC analyst, especially at the entry level. This is going to be something that you need to understand and comprehend and excel at, because one of these emails going through is could be detrimental to your whole organization. Malware attacks, viruses, malicious programs that attach to legitimate files and spread when files are executed. Everybody knows what a virus is. Somebody sends you a file, it opens up, you open it up, and now something bad is happening to your computer. Worms, self-replicating malware that spreads across systems without user interaction. Trojans, malware disguised as legitimate software, which can provide unauthorized access or control to the attacker. And a lot of times this is used for like remote access to your device. They'll disguise it as like, something from Google or something from Facebook, something from somewhere that you trust. Ransomware, encrypting the victim's data and demanding a ransom for the decryption. So basically, I send you something, or I get into your computer and install something that basically encrypts your hard drive. And once it's encrypted, unless you have the password or you have some way to decrypt it, then your data is essentially mine. And so, in order to get that data back, you'll need to go ahead and pay a ransom. And honestly, a lot of this stuff doesn't get reported. Not as much as that actually, not as much that actually happens. Like there's so many cases and scenarios of this, and some companies report it. A lot of them just kind of pay it, and it's all about keeping the trust of the customer. You're like, why wouldn't a company report it? Well, if you're a company like LastPass and you manage people's passwords, it might not be advantageous for you to report it. Or on the flip side, maybe it is, because maybe your customers are like, okay, if something happens, I do want to be informed. It just all depends on the industry and the level of customer trust you have. Spyware, collecting sensitive information without the user's knowledge. This is like when somebody downloads something and they just watch you, pretty much watch all your, like a keylogger is, I guess, considered spyware because you're logging every keystroke. But yeah, spyware, you're collecting sensitive information. So there's some more forms: exploitations of software vulnerabilities, a buffer overflow, exploiting a vulnerability in a program's memory to execute arbitrary code. And shoot, a lot of buffer overflow hacks look like somebody sending a lot of data, a lot of useless data to something, and then it'll wig out. Like if you send, I've seen them like execute code and it's a bunch of random numbers, like a lot of random numbers, but it'll overflow the system, and then they'll be able to execute their own code or whatever. SQL injections, inserting malicious SQL queries to manipulate or extract data from databases. A lot of this happens in like inputs. So like I've seen people use SQL injections to bypass like login pages, certain inputs if they're not sanitized. Like you can add different things to it, and you'll be able to tell. And I should probably do a course, or not even a course, I should probably just do a video on these different things and just kind of show you guys exactly what these are, because if you don't see it, then it's kind of hard for you to understand it. It was the same way with me until I saw it. I couldn't really wrap my head around how a lot of this stuff worked. Cross-site scripting is injecting malicious scripts into web applications affecting users who view the infected content. And basically this is like adding an extra like little slug to a URL. So you're going to Google /images /myvidbins.com, and that last little slug at the end is going to redirect you to whatever site or display whatever information. It's not about what's on the front part of the URL. It's like somewhere in the middle or somewhere. They'll just execute. They'll put random numbers at the end of it, and you'll be like, well, what is this? And it'll be something that's arbitrary. You won't notice it as an end user, but that's what cross-site scripting is when they basically take over a site and take over the URL. And, as soon as you go to that URL, it's going to redirect you. Remote code execution, executing malicious code on a remote server or a system. This is what a lot of attackers use when you have devices that are connected to the internet and they can control it remotely. I just but if you remember, a lot of you probably don't know what Stuxnet is, but it was about an Israeli nuclear plant getting hacked. And one of the big things about the code execution was that nothing on the plant was actually connected to the internet, but the code that they sent activated once it got on the right device. So once it realized that it was inside of the right device, it executed itself automatically. But most of the time, the remote code execution is what a lot of attackers want to utilize, because once they get something installed on your PC or device, they got to kick it off somehow. So that remote code execution is a way for them to execute code remotely. Password attacks, brute force is just repeatedly guessing passwords until the correct one is found. Dictionary attacks, trying a list of common passwords or words from the dictionary. They also like have a rainbow chart of like the 1,000 most common passwords, and you'd be surprised at how many people use those common passwords. Maybe with a little bit of customization, but the base of that password is pretty much on that rainbow on that rainbow chart. And a lot of these people, will just keep the same password, admin password. You'd be surprised how many people you would get with that. Credential stuffing, using known credentials from other breaches to gain unauthorized access. And all that's basically available on the dark web. So, if somebody is a credential stuffing, you probably got your credentials from a database, data breach somewhere, and there's a dump online on Tor that they got it from, and they just put it in. Physical attacks, tailgating, which is just gaining access to a restricted area by following an unauthorized person. A lot of people probably do this with apartment complexes in Atlanta. If the gate is open too long, somebody's going to slide in behind you. Dumpster diving, searching through discarded materials to find sensitive information. People will go through that dumpster, and what they're looking for is they're looking for like mail. They're looking for identifiable information. So definitely always be careful with disposing of your sensitive information, because if somebody is really determined, they'll find a way. So, and dumpster diving is one of those ways. Bypassing security controls, physically manipulating or disabling security devices. And this one is kind of broad, but there's a number of ways to get around a lot of these, like key readers or sensors and RFID, like locks and things like that. Wireless attacks, eavesdropping, intercepting wireless communications to capture sensitive data. Rogue access points, setting up unauthorized wireless access points to capture data or launch attacks. And evil twin, creating a malicious wireless network with a legitimate name to trick a user into connecting. So these are things that you would buy like hardware for, and I think it's called a pineapple. So you can set up like a pineapple, or you could even just buy your own access point. You don't even need a pineapple with the rogue access points. You just set up an access point and capture data, in an organization through that. But even that's a hardware thing. I think you gotta, if your access points are PoE, you have to go inside and actually connect it to, power over Ethernet. You have to connect it to Ethernet in there, in the actual organization. 7, insider threats, malicious insiders, individuals within the organization with unauthorized access who abuse their privileges. Unintentional insiders, employees who unknowingly compromise security through actions like clicking on malicious links. And that's the biggest thing you got to worry about is, a lot of times it's unintentional. Nobody's trying to get their company hacked. They know that could, mean their job and, a lot of legal litigation, and, there's just a lot that comes with that. So, that's the biggest thing you have to worry about. Like I said in our last class, your weakest link is, ultimately what's going to be the biggest attack vector for anybody attacking your company or organization. Supply chain attacks, compromised software. Attackers infiltrate software vendor systems and inject malicious code into legitimate software updates. Counterfeit hardware, using counterfeit or tampered hardware components that have backdoors or vulnerabilities. So this actually happened in the Greek Olympics, where there was a huge telecom company over in Greece. And during every Olympic Games, the NSA will reach out to these countries and say, hey, look, we can shore up, your defense and your cyber defense systems, and we can go through all the logs. We have the manpower and the resources to go through logs and make sure that, you guys haven't been compromised. And so what they did was they ended up sending them like switches from a certain company. And that company basically installed backdoors for the NSA on those switches. So stuff like that happens all the time. So So let's see, counterfeit hardware using tampered. Yep. So that's basically what it is. Even though it wasn't counterfeit, it was actually from the vendor, but there were vulnerabilities and backdoors placed on there intentionally by the NSA. 9, advanced persistent threats, long-term attacks, highly sophisticated attacks targeting specific organizations over extended periods, zero-day exploits, exploiting vulnerabilities that are unknown to the software vendor. So most attacks, whenever you get into a system and you gain a foothold, as a penetration tester, you want to gain persistence in that system. So even if you're kicked out one way, you're able to get in another way. So long-term attacks, a lot of times, especially with like state actors, people aren't just going in, hacking your stuff, and then leaving. They're continuing to set up surveillance. They're continuing to set up more backdoors, more vulnerabilities. They're compromising your system in a way that they can stay on for a long time. Cloud and virtualization attacks, VM escape, breaking out of a virtual machine to gain access to underlying host systems. Data breaches, gaining unauthorized access to cloud stored data. IoT and OT attacks, and this is basically the Internet of Things. Attacks on connected devices, exploiting vulnerabilities in Internet devices, things in IoT devices. So this could be, somebody exploiting your television, which has a microphone and a speaker in it. So, or like your remote, your remote has a microphone in it. All these things, a lot of these things have the ability to record, whether we know it or not. A lot of these things can record either like audio or some type of video. Like if you have a camera, like a Blink or a Ring camera outside of your home, then these cameras can be compromised and somebody could be surveilling you through your own camera. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities in the Internet of Things. I've been watching a lot more videos, and it's all based around firmware, So and hardware. There are different hardware attacks as well where you physically access the device and do a lot of things. I looked at I'm not even gonna say that because that's operational technology attacks targeting industrial controls and critical infrastructure. And this is kind of the Stuxnet thing where they targeted the Israeli nuclear plant, and what they did was they overclocked, or made it look like they were overclocking, I don't even know what it was, a nuclear turbine or whatever. And they kept trying to turn it down. Oh, they said it was underperforming. So they said they were underclocked. So basically they were saying that this turbine isn't working. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And so each time the employees are bumping it up, whole time it is working properly, and them adding more power to it is making it spin in a way that it can't maintain, and end up breaking and blowing up and busting up and doing a bunch of stuff. So that was one of the first times that people had seen, an attack, a cyber attack, manifest itself in the physical world in that way. Remember, this list isn't exhaustive, so basically this list isn't everything that you're going to see or that you're going to encounter out there in the world. It's important to stay up to date, of course, on the latest cybersecurity trends. Like that's the thing that's going to set you apart from a lot of people, is like if you're constantly up to date on what's new, what's coming new. Like once you get into this, you'll never stop learning. So the one thing about IT I'll say is that if you are somebody who loves to constantly learn new things, then this is perfect for you, because there's always going to be, every day there's going to be something new. Like every day I see something new, and it's like interesting. Like Teams, somebody can be a false actor on Teams and send messages that look like they're coming from somebody in your organization, and they're not. So, there's a lot of different things out there that you come across every day, different 0 days and things like that happen all the time. And you as a cybersecurity professional, you got to be on point. You got to be ready for a lot of this stuff. So that's that on that. You definitely got to be prepared. So what is information technology and IT risk management? And this is a big part of our course. We've talked about compliance, and now we're going to talk about risk management. So while presenting the results of a security audit to the board of a medium-sized healthcare company, the lead penetration tester for a third party. Basically, this story is about, you can read it itself, but the breakdown is basically, we're an auditing company and we go in and we get paid to audit or test their security systems. And an organization hired a second auditing company that found things on their report that weren't necessarily on our report. So they ended up letting our company go because we weren't able to find the full scope of vulnerabilities in their organization. So it's basically just a way to show you that cybersecurity, especially in the consulting, especially in the consultation field or running your own MSP, it's competitive. These organizations are taking their cybersecurity more and more seriously, as they should. And it's basically the best man wins. You want to find as many vulnerabilities as you can, in order to give them a full scope and a great picture of what they need to do moving forward to protect themselves. And that your job and your money is on the line every time. Every time you go out and do this stuff, it's super important. It's just like a basketball or football game where you're going in and you're playing against an opposing team, and you're trying to win. So always keep that in mind. Risk management is a term that both IT and security teams employ every day, whether they realize it or not. It is the consistent process of identifying, analyzing, evaluating, and treating loss exposures while also observing risk control and resources in efforts to mitigate the adverse effects of loss. It is often a practice that is also employed within IT departments but used for enterprise systems, networks, and devices to mitigate potential cyber threats. When security professionals today use the term governance, risk management, and compliance, they're talking about their daily activities. It is vital to mature risk management practices on a continual basis. Otherwise, the technologies we use will become nothing more than the internet of threats. So basically, you want to stay up to date with government risk management and compliance, as well as make sure that you have a good plan going in. The majority of all risk management, including IT risk management, falls within the best practices represented by the term governance, risk, and compliance. GRC regularly involves more than simply choosing a framework or conducting a single risk management exercise. Accepted GRC practices call for integrating and rehearsing practical risk management tactics in their initiatives. Implementing a risk management strategy entails creating, implementing, and measuring your efficacy of procedures and processes. It also involves considering how your organization identifies and handles risks and legal expectations. These expectations can include financial, technological, and human resources, and industry risk or federal regulations. An example of this would be what I kind of went over earlier, which is my old company. We used to have a system called KnowBe4, and KnowBe4 would, with KnowBe4, you can deploy like fake phishing emails inside of your organization and see who clicks it, and people will get a KnowBe4 score, and they'll continue to get tested if they don't know the difference between a phishing email and a legitimate email. So KnowBe4 is something that we implemented, and you can also report directly to us if there is some type of fishy email coming into your inbox and things like that. So that's one way that we practice IT risk management, is trying to educate our employees and trying to keep them up to date with new ways that they can be exploited. Many compliance, governance, and business risk management teams approach risk management with the goal of following a formula that focuses on a 5-step process. This process focuses on risk management and mitigation goals in order to meet optimal compliance. It also includes identifying the risk, conducting risk analysis or assessment activities, prioritizing them, responding to the risk, and monitoring its potential threat. Common risk management issues. While this common 5-step process can help ensure compliance, the way teams approach risk management from a business standpoint does not always translate into the same methodology of how IT risk management for cybersecurity is approached. This is often a common issue across enterprises when approaching business risks versus cybersecurity risks. Cybersecurity often requires IT pros and leaders to look within the deeper root The causes of their increased IT risk management. Below are some of the common root causes for IT risk management issues. Third-party IT solutions or shadow IT solutions are always hard because as a third-party solution, they come with their own third-party support, or at least they should. Immaturity of processes. So maybe we don't have any processes in place for how to secure our server system or how to secure our network. Technical debt and lack of communication. Technical debt, I don't really know what they mean by that. I don't know if they mean maybe they don't have maybe just the information, you don't have access to the information, or you don't know. It's almost like it's not what you know that you don't know that you should be worried about, but it's the things that you don't know are the things that you should be worried about. And I think that kind of falls in the category of technical debt. Here you can see the different types of cyber threats, spoofing, phishing, social engineering, which are probably the most common right now. DDoS attacks, which happen, but not as a lot of new hardware and software has have things in place to kind of avoid this. Malware, ransomware, human error is probably the biggest one. And so governance and your risk management compliance are gonna basically be an umbrella in case of all this stuff happening. So risk identification, risk acceptance, risk transfer, risk avoidance, risk reduction, and risk tolerance are all things that are going to be talked about. Enterprise security controls as compared with regulatory goals. Security controls are broad tasks that must be implemented, such as backing up information systems or encrypting data. The majority of security protocols within organizations include ensuring proper access control policies and procedures, access enforcement, separation of duties, and least privilege permissions. These controls can also include penetration testing and other system monitoring activities. Within greater regulatory compliance, there are specifications of those controls depending on the law and industry in which it applies. For example, PCI DSS has more than 50 security controls. HIPAA has more than 100, and FISMA NIST has more than NIST has more than 1,000. I'm sorry, sometimes I just read these things off like how they sound, but they're acronyms all for something. It's just something I do. Don't worry about it. It's a weird quirk. It's important to note that one specific legal regulation can apply across multiple industries. For instance, legislation like HIPAA is designed to protect patient and provider data, but it can cover more than healthcare, as it also applies to HR practices within the organization. So basically, your HR department cannot release certain information about you. They have all the information they need. They have your social, they have everything. Your first and last name, your last address. Like, they have a lot of information, so they can't just willy-nilly just send that information off to somebody who's not a part of the organization or doesn't comply with regulatory practices. NIST Special Publication 800 through 53 outlines common security protocols used by industries across the globe. The more cybersecurity controls, the more difficult the regulation will be to implement. If IT risk management is focused solely on compliance versus IT risk maturity, security controls and processes, when done effectively, are critical to ensure global economies function securely and businesses continue to provide services, maintain our medical systems, and protect our national security. So these are just kind of the common frameworks. There are numerous risk management frameworks that exist today. It's important to understand that such frameworks represent only the beginning of the GRC maturity process. As you begin improving organizational processes, it can be useful to consult appropriate frameworks such as these. NIST, we kind of went over that. It provides a U.S. government-defined process meant to integrate security, privacy, and cyber supply chain risk management. The goal is to create a systematic approach that resembles a system development lifecycle. This framework has been adopted worldwide, so this is pretty common. The ISO 27001 and ISO 27002, these two documents enable organizations of any kind to use security controls to manage the security of assets such as financial information, intellectual property, employee details, or information entrusted by third parties. So that's kind of what covers what's all implemented in that. You have another NIST 800 through 53, and that's the common one that we just talked about earlier. And there's another one as well. And you can kind of go through these and look up what these different frameworks mean. These are kind of like just some short, brief descriptions. But a lot of these are implemented with the federal government and federal agencies. All right. So these are some of the frameworks and some of the scenarios. As you can see, NIST keeps coming up, so it's obviously important. In some scenarios, governments and corporations around the world will use NIST-based standards, even though they were originally created in the United States. Other organizations globally may focus more on ISO standards as the beginning of their risk management journey. Certain organizations are also expected to comply systematically with such frameworks. For example, pen testers and security auditors often focus on the security controls and processes listed in these documents. Many companies and organizations within the finance sector, especially banks, also use the NIST cybersecurity framework. These organizations undergo audits to ensure that they comply with required government regulations. Nevertheless, many organizations use frameworks as a beginning of solidifying their risk management goal. It's important to understand that the above frameworks only represent the beginning of the risk management process. Security professionals are expected to modify and depart from the above frameworks in many cases, based on the needs of an organization and the risks that organizations encounter. How to build and implement a risk management plan in 4 steps. Every organization needs one. If you go into an organization as a cybersecurity analyst, you're going to have to understand and know what your plan is. But building and implementing an IT risk management plan or a more resilient risk management plan is crucial in today's digital-driven world. Obviously, the key goal for building a risk management plan is to write, develop, and practice the plan. Practical and realistic risk management needs to be written down and documented, or will remain only an idea and a set of abstract strategies. And so let's go into the 4 steps. Let's go over the 4 steps here. Identify your organization's risk and potential vulnerabilities. So obviously, if you get a lot of phishing emails, that's a high attack vector for your organization. Some get more than others based on what their business is and what industry they're in. Risk looks and feels different across industries. Some industries have more risk than others. However, risk is something that exists in all businesses. It's important for IT teams and business leadership to work together to identify what common risks their organizations face. For example, risk identification is going to be different for small retail shops than it would be for a hospital. For a small retail shop, the biggest risk could be an attack on their digital inventory or a payment processing system. In contrast, a hospital is going to have more need for secure processes and must understand that they face a digital risk with their customers' data and personally identifiable information, health information, email servers, networks, computer systems, and more. If you cannot identify the weakest points of your business infrastructure, then you may find that attackers will gladly aim to exploit those for you. the goal of practical risk management is to know your weak trigger points. Only then can you work to improve processes and mitigate them. So what this looks like, obviously, is for some people, if you don't have the background knowledge to test your own organization, it's probably good to bring in an auditor or bring in a team of pen testers that or security professionals that can tell you, hey, like, this is exposed to the internet. This right here exposes your organization in this way. So definitely consult with people who have more knowledge than you. Don't be scared to ask questions, especially when it comes to this, because you don't want to be answering questions, down the line of why this is the way it is, and you don't have the answers, basically, because of things that are going on in your organization or just your own prior knowledge. You just might not have the knowledge, and what you know that you don't know isn't going to kill you. It isn't going to sink you. It's what you don't know that you need to know that's going to sink you. And trust me, there is a lot of that in IT. Like, I was on a networking call today, and there were things that I didn't know that I needed to know, but that the support on the line knew, and that they were able to say, like, hey, look, we need this information, that information in order to do this. So always confer with somebody who has some level of knowledge that can, help guide you, because ultimately it's going to be your ass on the line if anything happens. And you don't want to leave any stone unturned when it comes to security. Evaluate and assess risk to focus on more zero trust activities versus good to go. Once the primary risks of the organization have been identified, IT professionals and organizational leaders need to instill practices and processes that aim to evaluate and mitigate that risk. The sweet spot for practical risk management sits in between regulation, compliance, GRC, and internal and external risks. This is where business needs to focus on maturing their processes. For example, over the past few years, many IT pros and leaders have regularly heard the term zero trust, and zero trust is kind of just annoying. Shared in regard to risk management, zero trust is more than just a security term. It's a process to implement for practical risk management. A zero trust framework views risks as existing on both sides of the firewall. It looks at internal risks as detrimental as external risks. Zero trust also looks at the processes in place to better secure internal systems as much as external systems. Zero trust focuses on processes that require better security plus checks and balances within the organization. For illustration, let's look at the internal processes of your organization of allow listing or deny listing. This is big. If your organization deals with a lot of controlled data and intellectual property, restricting or securely limiting internal users access to external sites like social media sites can minimize the risk of data leaks from your business. It also removes the good to go aspect, assuming that risk no longer exists. Zero trust approaches can also help improve the Internet of Things, operational technology security. 3, you want to ensure effective communication between the IT and business leadership. This is important because a lot of times you're going to be breaking down complex ideas to people who are not as technically savvy or don't have the same level of knowledge in this particular field as you do. So you have to be able to explain things in layman's terms and kind of dumb things down for leadership, and because nobody wants to hear you go through a whole technical dissertation about how XYZ happened. Like, get straight to the point, make it simple so that people can understand and they can make decisions based off the information that you're giving. So IT pros, management, and business leaders need to implement better communication across teams. They need to talk to each other, not at each other, and simplify terminology if needed depending on the audience. Conversations should also be more proactive and not reactive. When building and implementing a risk management plan in an organization, regular risk conversation and communication must be a part of the equation. In today's constant threat landscape, ignorance is no longer bliss, and risk avoidance only hinders processes. It does not help them. So yeah, be somebody who acts, instead of reacting to something, be somebody who acts proactively. Put things in place proactively that can mitigate risk, and also communicate that with business leaders, and make sure that you guys aren't just yelling at each other about why we can't do this or why we can't do that. I had a situation where a manager was locked out this week, and her employee, somebody who worked with her, was emailing me on the side and was asking for her password so that she could get into her account. And obviously, this is a little thing, but you don't give out anybody else's password to anybody else. So it didn't get into a situation where we were talking at each other. We were able to have a meaningful conversation, and she sent me over. We ended up connecting through phone, through phone numbers outside of Teams and Outlook or whatever. But she just was able to give me a call. I said, just pass along my number, and she can give me a call, and I'll give her the password. But I just can't. It's just common practice. I can't give somebody else's password to somebody else in the organization. Review and run risk scenario simulations and exercises. So definitely organizations have to take time to review and run risk scenario simulations and exercises. For example, the Target data breach was one of the largest breaches in recent history, and it spearheaded the implementation of better security practices. While some aspects of that breach are still unclear, all it took was one phishing email to unleash an attack that compromised more than 100 million people's personal information. Phishing, I'm telling you, phishing, that's the name of the game nowadays. Especially with all these AI tools that can write up an email for you, it's a no-brainer. You don't even need to try to craft an email nowadays. You can ask ChatGPT to create an email requesting that a financial department changes a vendor's payment details to whatever payment details you want and make it look super official. For organizations to implement a practical risk management plan, they need to start focusing on activities that run employees and leadership through scenarios, simulations, and exercises. Leadership can create tabletop exercises for IT pros and management to talk through a proposed security incident together and how it can be best rectified. Cybersecurity teams should work with leadership to create full-on activities that involve major portions of the entire organization. Namely, they can run phishing campaigns, like the one I was saying. Got to send phishing emails to employees to target where they may be greater risk of incidents in specific departments or teams. And let me tell you, those phishing emails, if you fail enough of them, they will can your butt. Best practices for effectively managing information risk in IT. The primary best practices for organizations to effectively manage risk information in IT is to focus on maturing security processes within your organization. Doing this involves employee organizational activities like the following. Best practices for more engagement with upper management. They tend to focus on technology more than the overall risk of an organization. Management has a tendency to focus on risk and ignore technology. As a security professional, it's your job to liaise with executives and technical workers. These involve holding meetings, gathering data, and identifying commonalities, conducting regular meetings, and communicating with individuals and groups inside the organization. Will help you better apply security controls and make appropriate changes to them. Without a consensus and administrative buy-in, and any solution will appear and actually be inadequate and ineffective to help better manage risk. So basically, this is just saying, like, get the IT team, the infrastructure team, whatever admins you have, and get your execs on the same page, because ultimately, without them on the same page, it doesn't matter what you implement. It'll be inadequate. And a lot of this stuff does rely on, a lot of this stuff does rely on, end users, being diligent. Best practices for effectively managing and informing information risk in IT. We will go over a little bit of this next week. It's been an hour, so I don't want to hold you guys too much more. There's not too much left. I guess best practices for effectively managing information risk in IT. We can't go through this. It's not too much left. You want to identify business processes that need modification. Determine existing technical procedures and controls, as well as codifying changes. And all of these are basically ways, and you can go through and look at them Conduct a business impact analysis, identify risk management strategies that apply to your particular organization. These strategies can include acceptance, avoidance, transference, cybersecurity insurance, and mitigation. And when they say cybersecurity insurance, it's basically somebody who backs up your data so that if something were to ever happen to your business, you have basically a clone of your scale or your architecture, infrastructure, and data, somewhere else that can keep business running. Identify impacts on business processes, determine how issues can impact an organization in terms of law and privacy frameworks that apply to the organization. The best practices for practical risk management focus on processes versus the compliance or GRC demands of the organization. For better risk management, organizations need to shift the risk mindset from avoidance or tolerance to implementing more zero trust within their processes. Leadership also needs to shift the narrative to concentrate their risk management on best practices. They should pivot to increasing organizational resilience rather than compliance. Improving processes requires a strategic approach to IT in order to improve security. Taking a strategic approach to increase resilience is the best way to improve confidence in the organization's process. 6 signs you are doing risk management. Think risk management applies externally and internally. Implement no or zero trust. Go beyond good to good. No longer thinking in terms of right. Because one person could be right, but that doesn't mean that somebody else with a different opinion is wrong. Think firewalls don't cut it. Treat risks such as inside or outside are maturing processes. So these are all signs. Education is critical. So education is a critical element in the maturing process and implementing proper risk management within organizations. This is best done through training and education. IT teams and business leaders need to focus on being resilient with their processes, which requires adapting and evolving knowledge and skills in an ever-changing threat landscape. These are some things that if you are interested in security and you want to dive deeper, just throw these in the Google search and, look at the most credible sources like CompTIA certifications. A lot of these certification pages offer a bevy of information. So teach incident response procedures. This is all stuff that is on the Security Plus as well. So this is directly related to the CompTIA Security Plus, and this is what it teaches. So it teaches incident response procedures, security best practices, governance, risk, and compliance best practices, risk management implementation, cloud security, tactical risk management, full compliance, penetration testing, and vulnerability assessments. I know that's probably what a lot of people are interested in: enterprise network and architecture security. So this is the CompTIA resource, and there are more resources on some of the other pages. But that's pretty much it for our security section of the course. We didn't get too deep into it. We kind of just scratched the surface of what cybersecurity is, what compliance is, and what risk management is. As you can see, this is basically the exam page, and this is kind of what we just went through, what skills you'll learn. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, you want to make $300,000 working from the crib as a penetration tester, then shoot, we'll have a course for you coming up here pretty soon as we study for our Security Plus after we're done with this. In this course, I kind of just wanted to cover the basics, the fundamentals of IT infrastructure, working as an analyst, working as somebody who's, basically at the entry level of their IT career. And as we move forward and we progress together, then we'll dig a little bit deeper on, how to deploy these vulnerabilities or deploy this malware and all this stuff. I'll do courses on that, as well as how to defend against it. So definitely take your time to go through this course and listen to it, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. I appreciate everybody for watching. Um, shoot, thanks, man. Like and subscribe. This is it helps the channel out a lot, and we could really use it for sure. Definitely share it with people who need the information and are looking to get into IT and all that. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you for watching. I'm out.